Hello, students, and welcome to class. Did you know I'd can mean two completely different things? Today, we're unlocking that secret, and it's easier than you think. We've been on quite a journey in this Contractions series. We've covered the to be contractions, I'm, you're, he's, the to have contractions, I've, you've, we've, and the will contractions, I'll, you'll, they'll. Today we're diving into one of the most interesting groups yet, contractions with would and had. Just like he's and she's did double duty in video 2, today's contractions are pulling double duty again. Let's jump in. I'll say the two full versions first, and then the contraction. Repeat after me. I would and I had becomes I'd. As in, I'd love to visit Paris someday, or I'd already heard the news. You would and you had becomes you'd. For example, you'd really enjoy that movie. Or you'd never met her before, had you? He would and he had becomes he'd, as in he'd do anything for his family. Or he'd already left by the time I arrived. She would and she had becomes she'd. For example, she'd love to join us, or she'd finish the whole book by Monday. It would, or it had, becomes it'd, as in it'd be great to have more time, or it had been sitting there for weeks. We would and we had becomes we'd, like we'd love to go to dinner with you, or we'd already made our decision. They would and they had becomes they'd, as in they'd appreciate a thank you note, or they'd never seen anything like it. A quick note on it'd, like it'll from our last video. You'll hear this more in speech rather than writing. It does get used sometimes in writing, but less so. Don't be shy about using it though when you are speaking because it sounds perfectly natural to say. So you already know the pattern. Two words get pushed together and a little apostrophe marks where some letters are dropped. With this group, we take would or had and squeeze them down to just one letter, the letter D, and that gets attached to the pronoun. So I would becomes I'd, very short, and I had also becomes I'd. The same contraction, two different meanings. So how do you tell them apart? Again, context. What do the words around the contraction say? Just like we did with he's and she's in video 2, the words that follow the contraction make it clear. So if the D is followed by a base verb, it usually means would. For example, I'd love to come means I would love to come. If D is followed by a past participle, it usually means had. For example, I'd eaten the cherries means I had eaten the cherries. It sounds like a lot, but in real conversation, it becomes very natural very quickly. So let's take a look at each one. So first, just listen and repeat after me. I'll say the full phrase and then the contraction. I would, or I had, I'd. You would, or you had, you'd. He would, he had, he'd. She would, or she had, she'd. It would, or it had, it'd. That's a tricky one. We would, or we had, becomes we'd. They would, or they had becomes they'd. Excellent. Now, let's put some of these into sentences because there's two for each. We're not going to do all of them, but just a few. How would you say, we had always dreamed of opening a restaurant, using the correct contraction? Very good. We'd always dreamed of opening a restaurant. Let's do another one. How would you change, they would appreciate a thank you note? Yes, they'd appreciate a thank you note. And one last one. How about, she would love to join us? Very good. She'd love to join us. Wonderful. You are getting the hang of this. All right, and now my favorite part of every video, the story practice. First, just listen to the story, and then you'll have a chance to put in the contractions later. Last summer, my friends decided to plan a surprise party for our dear friend Louisa. We'd been thinking about it for months, and we knew it'd be perfect at the right restaurant. I'd always known Louisa loved Italian food, so that seemed like the right choice. She'd mentioned it a few times that year, and we figured she'd be thrilled. Mark wanted to help with decorations. He'd never done that before, but he said he'd make it look amazing. Tony and Joey promised not to tell about the party. They'd never kept a secret successfully before, but I knew they'd keep this one somehow. And they did. I'd worried for nothing. You'd have loved to see Louisa's face when she walked in. Afterward, when we'd all celebrated together, I knew it had been worth every bit of planning. You'd better come to the next party. Now it's your turn. I'll read the story again without the contractions. And when I pause, you will say the correct contraction. I know you will. Last summer, my friends decided to plan a surprise party for our dear friend Louisa. We had been thinking about it for months. And we knew it would be perfect at the right restaurant. I had always known Louisa loved Italian food, so that seemed like the right choice. She had mentioned it a few times that year. And we figured she would be thrilled. Mark wanted to help with decorations. He had never done that before. But he said he would make it look amazing. Tony and Joey promised not to tell about the party. They had never kept a secret successfully before. But I knew they would keep this one somehow. And they did. I had worried for nothing. You would have loved to see Louisa's face when she walked in. Afterward, when we had all celebrated together, I knew it had been worth every bit of planning. You had better come to the next party. So, how did you do? Excellent. And we're done. I'd, you'd, he'd, she'd, it'd, we'd, they'd. We've covered so much today. One little apostrophe D, and it does two big jobs. The more you listen for these in real English conversations, in movies, in podcasts, the more automatic they're going to become for you. So here's your comment challenge. For the comments below, write a sentence using one of today's contractions. Either with would or had, they write the same way, just like they sound the same way. Try I'd, we'd, or they'd. I'd love to read what you come up with. If you're just joining us, parts 1 through 3 are all linked right here. Go check them out. And in part 5, we're going to be covering negative contractions. Words like isn't, aren't, haven't, and don't. Hit the like and subscribe button so you don't miss it. Also, in the comments below, let me know if you have any specific language challenges. We would love to help you out in a future video. Thank you for watching and keep practicing.